Welcome to Mastering Your World Through Frequencies. In this episode, there's an introduction, an interview, and most importantly, at the end, a group frequency calibration where the frequency work happens and change is catalyzed. Enjoy.
Hi everyone, this is Karen Cheong, and I'm here with my co-host Tia. One of the most important ingredients in the recipe for awakening is surrender. How well we are able to truly surrender from strength determines how far up our frequency resonance can rise and how much progress we can make on our awakening journey. Even if you intellectually know that surrender is important, there are still so many questions. So today we're going to discuss how we surrender, why it's so important, and what the benefits of surrender are so we can continue to accelerate forward. And after the discussion, we get to the most important part of this episode. The group frequency calibration at the end is where the frequency work happens and where change actually occurs. So be sure to listen to that. Without releasing distortion patterns targeted by the GFC, the change you want will be more difficult to attain because you haven't addressed the root of the issue. So let's get started.
Okay, Karen, so I have a few questions to start. What would you say surrender is? And is it the same as neutrality? And then also, what is the benefit of surrender?
Sure. So those are really great questions. And the reason we're diving deeper into this is because although we have an episode right at the very beginning called Surrender from Strength, there have been a lot of questions about surrender, right? Just trying to clarify. So that's why we're doing this particular episode. So to me, surrender is about letting go of a couple of things. One is attachment. The second is resistance and control. So when we have those things, we're not surrendered, okay? And there's a lot of friction in our lives. So to me, that is what surrender is. And also, is it the same as neutrality? I think your question was. They go hand in hand. So the more neutral you become, the more you are, or the less you are attached to what happens, meaning in the sense of you're not as attached to a certain outcome playing out, okay? And as a result, you are in more of a surrendered state. The more surrendered you are, the more neutral you become, right? So they're kind of like friends.
They work together.
Yeah, they work together. So you can't actually have one as much without the other. They actually come into play together. The first thing, though, to happen probably would be surrender first. The surrender must happen for you to start to enter the neutral state. Does that make sense? It's the beginning point.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
Because you can't be neutral without
the surrender first.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to begin. It's like a little spiral that sort of builds on itself. Neutrality, surrender, and actually there's another piece, accountability. But all that stuff spirals together, but the initiation has to be in the surrender. That's the first step to start that. So to me, they're different and complementary. And then your third question was, what is the benefit? Yeah. Okay, why do we care? So surrender is such a critical part of the awakening process. Why? Because we have ego minds. Okay, and because we have ego minds, or what I consider to be the little s self, the self identified with ego, we want what we think we want, and we prefer to have it as immediately as possible.
Sounds about right. I want what I want, and I want it now.
Exactly. So that's not very surrendered. That's like pretty driven by will and mind and attachment, actually. So as a result, because we stay mired in if we stay mired in the ego mind and can't let go of that need to control and have things turn out the way we want them, we can't rise in frequency resonance. You can get up to a certain point, but then you can't go any further because you're always in resistance to the unfolding of what is, and you're more identified with your ego mind than you are with your big S self, which is the self identified with spirit, with you as infinite, indestructible consciousness, aware that you are this little fragment, but very important part of the all that is. So as a result, it's like you realize, like, to push against the unfolding of what is, it's like you're pushing against this massive mountain and there's like no way you're going to win.
No, it's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. I mean, you can try, you'll exhaust yourself, but it's kind of futile. So in order also for us to ascend into higher levels of resonance, not only do we have to let go of that ego mind and that like desire, control, we also have to release fear. Okay, so fear is pretty fundamental. As humans, it's pretty much hardwired into us. And it's hard to surrender when we're scared, right? And we have a definite fear of the unknown. But until we can surmount that fear, right? To recognize that we're having it. It's not like you're fearless. It's like you have the fear, but you also recognize that there's something bigger that is supporting you, this brilliance is coming through you, and that you actually feel your indestructibleness, right? It's like you feel that expansiveness of that bigness. So yes, there's this human life, which is important, but it's also very finite. And so you recognize that more and more. And so you surrender to that much, much bigger picture.
And it might take a couple steps. Like I just thought about when I almost drowned when I was 22. And I went through stages, and I looked it up later. Like, this is a common thing you go through, like pure panic, first of all. Like, I'm like, whoa, and kicking around and like, oh my God, because I don't swim very well. And it was also like class 3 rapids. So it was hard for anybody, even a good swimmer. So pure panic, right? And then there was a point of just accept it. Like, I accepted I was going to die. I was like, I just let go, surrender. And there was this unbelievable peace. And then a lot of people seem to have a similar situation. So it's like, you may kick and scream for a second, and then it's like, okay, got it.
And you recognize something that you release into what will unfold. Yes.
And then everything works out.
It works out, exactly, somehow. Exactly. And so, but that kicking and the screaming is the fear, right? And it's hardwired into us. So part of that process, and it's not just fear of like, so for a lot of people, the challenge with surrender is it's interwoven with death. So meaning, right, like what you were struggling against in that kicking and screaming, was you were fighting death, right? You were just like, right, resisting, you're trying to stay alive. That's
and you're right, that's hardwired into us. Like when I went skydiving, you're going up in this rickety plane, and you're just like, this isn't right, I'm done. I'm not, like nothing in you is like, okay, I'm gonna jump out. You have to like move that aside and like because we're supposed to survive. That's a good thing to be hardwired. You have to like make a choice to like not want to do that.
Exactly. And so for a lot of us, the way that we run our patterns, there's this, depending on the person, so not only is it in us, like globally, but also people have more distortion around that from past lives, et cetera, where there's an interweaving of death and surrender. Because really the final surrender is death. Right? In our physical lives. Right? And so when we start to surrender, for some people, like that tripwire of like, oh my God, this is like death to me, will go off sooner. Does that make sense? So you have to release some of the distortion around that. So the benefit of surrender, like I said, is that not only do you get to rise higher in your frequency resonance, you also start to be able to access the big S self, right? That peace that you felt, actually, when you went into that surrender state, you accessed the big S self in that moment, where you're like, oh wow, it's this expansive peace. It's all going to be just fine. I don't know why I know that, but it just is. That's the big S self.
Beautiful.
So you recognize that more, you can access that more. And when you're in that surrender state, first of all, it's a lot more peaceful and joyful because you're not in resistance. There's not as much friction, right? If you're like fighting everything along the way because you're like, I want to have it this way, and if it's not like this, then it makes me upset or fearful or worried or anxious or whatever it is. It makes life harder because you're like constantly resisting against it. It causes all this friction. So you move into this state where you get to follow more magic, more synchronicity, more of that, because you're not trying to control everything from your mind standpoint where you're like, I only want this.
Right. That's like the flow state. If people have heard of Wu Wei, like the action of non-action. It's like not pushing against the stream, allowing the stream to take you.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, cool.
So, and the stream is, the universe. So it's huge and pretty powerful. So it's best to follow. And like I said, it just, you get to the point in surrender where you start to transcend the mind, where you don't need to know why. So for example, you might show up somewhere because you're like, I have no idea why I'm going to this retreat. I have no idea why I'm visiting this friend. I don't know why I'm going here right now.
Like us moving to Hawaii. Our separate stories were kind of like that.
Yeah, exactly. Or why I'm picking up this book and reading it, or why, I don't know, but I'm just going to pick it up and see what happens, right? And so that's also like a part of surrender. And it's the moving past the mind's need to know.
So I have an important question.
Sure.
So I've actually thought this, I wanted to ask this for a while. So what about, let me see how to formulate, like balancing having a need or a desire and like letting it go. Like
where's control and surrender? Where do they and desire? How do they?
Because you don't want to just be apathetic.
Around. Exactly. No, it
surrender to everything.
Yes, no. I thank you for that question. I think it's a great question. It's the one that a lot of people have. So surrender has to do with attachment, right? So I just want to separate that from desire.
Good.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
So you have the desire. Desire is important. Okay. I know there's a lot of people who are like, desire is bad. Desire is not bad. It's the attachment to what you desire that is not good. Okay. So desire is the seed of creation. Okay. If not, you would just be lying on your couch doing nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, why would you want
no
anything?
Vision,
no vision, nothing.
Direction.
Yeah. You'd just be like, whatever.
Yeah.
But desire is the seed of you being able to create something. Okay. So desire is great. So forward momentum is important. So following what it is that you initially have the impulse towards, right, to create, to whatever in the world. The challenge is when you come up against when things aren't going your way. Okay. That's a cue to us to be like, wait a minute here. Yeah. What am I resisting? Because the only reason you're in resistance is because you want something a certain way. That's a red flag for, hi, I'm attached to this for whatever reason, right? Because you're fearful, you want something for whatever reason, it doesn't really matter what it is, but, right, you're attached. Okay, that is a good indication for you to stop and be like, wait a minute, what am I attached to here? What am I resisting? Or what am I trying to control? Any of those things are happening. So it's not that the desire is bad. It's like the desire, it's the attachment to the outcome. So here you are going along in whatever you're creating and it's turning out great. But then you hit something and you're like, whoa, something's happening and I'm triggered here. All right, it's not that you just like keel over and surrender. It's more like, okay, so what's happening here? So to look at self, this has a lot to do with accountability and self-awareness. Where am I, like I said, resisting, attached, or wanting to control? And the other thing I just want to mention is that just taking your question a little further, a lot of people will be like, well, does that mean we just surrender if someone's like trying to take advantage of us? No, don't do that.
Oh, right.
You don't, okay, so let me just make this really clear. I'm talking about surrender from strength, okay? So surrender from strength only to pure source. Not to other people, not to oppression, not to control, to pure source. That's it. That's what you're surrendering to. I just want to clarify that, right? Because we kind of lose sight.
It's a huge clarification.
Right? Yeah. And then people are like, okay, well, if I'm being oppressed, I'll surrender. I'm like, no. You hold your space.
Right.
Okay, in that sense. Does that make sense?
That's a great thing to clarify.
Yeah, just because I think people think they take it a little too far. And I'm like, no. There's only one thing you're surrendering to, and that's pure source, right?
Okay.
That's different.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. And so it's important to remember that.
Okay.
Just to extrapolate a little bit down the road of what you were saying.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of examples too to just really nail that in. So like, an easy example, you're wanting to go somewhere.
Yeah.
You get in the car, you drive, traffic.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, even just that simple, like, it's like, just, okay, there's traffic. I'm going to sit here a little longer. Yeah. That's fine. That's surrender. Yeah. Or like, I want to buy a house.
Yeah.
I'm not sure the details, but I know I want to buy a house. And then you start getting all like heady about this one and it's got to be this thing and it doesn't turn out. And then you're like, and you're pissed. That's not surrendering.
Yes.
But if it's something like, in a relationship, it doesn't have to be this, I'm just giving an example. An abusive relationship, somebody keeps beating you, and you're like, well, this is the current moment. Yeah. I'm going to surrender. No.
Yeah.
That's not what
you hold your space. Yeah. So, for example, and it might not even be like physical abuse, it could be some form of oppression or control.
Yeah.
So, for us, one of the lessons I had to learn is that because for me, so I think this will make sense. For me, scarcity was really tied into surrender. Okay, so for me, it was like I had to learn how to hold my space and surrender. Okay, at the same time. So we were real estate agents, as you know, in San Francisco. And when I was learning this lesson, we had a set of clients. Like usually, our clients were amazing. Okay, like awesome people, respectful, grateful. We worked very hard for them, provided them a great amount of value, and we had a wonderful collaboration. This particular set of clients came to us and they were abusive, like did not appreciate anything we're doing, were very belittling in their conversation with us, just had a lot of fear, were just kind of over the top in terms of like their, let's say, dynamic with us, okay? And so we had to learn. Now this was at a point where we had, it's a very expensive like home that we were selling. And we'd been a little bit slow. We were just coming out of the winter, which is like a slow period of time for realtors, generally speaking, in San Francisco. And it was it was a luxury condo. And so Chris and I had to realize that we're like, okay, we're going to hold our space here. Do you see? Because I mean, this is too abusive, what's happening. So it's like, we could just like capitulate to everything they want. And we had actually been like upping the ante, right? So they'd be doing whatever, and so we'd deliver more. And they'd do whatever, like their little overreactiveness or whatever they're doing, and we would deliver more. Yeah, exactly. We were accommodating. And then finally, I was just like, we're done. So it's to like hold your space. It's like, no, and actually we ended up firing them. Nice. We were just about to take it to market. So we'd done all the work, and we're like, we are going to terminate this agreement. You can work with anyone else, because every other realtor will want to take this to you, because this place is worth a lot of money. It's ready. And it's going to sell really fast. And what was interesting at the end of that is they said to us, we really respect how you handled that. We respect your decision. We actually have more respect for you now than we did before. Whoa. And I thought that was really interesting.
Wow.
So we didn't get a commission, but I was thinking to myself, the amount of abuse that you would have to withstand to get and you don't even know if you would get it, and it's just kind of ridiculous.
The respect was big enough commission.
Yeah, I was just like, and also terminating it, right? To hold your space and just be like, done. Like that is not okay with me. So that's just an example of holding your space. And some of us who are brought up to be very nice people and who want to overachieve and deliver service to our clients or whoever we're serving, this can be something that comes up for you, like where you're going to have to hold your space. You'd be like, no, this is not okay. And so my point simply is that is important to do in that moment, to define like for you, what is your boundary? And like, that is not okay that this person is being aggressive, controlling, abuse. And it's okay that even though I feel scarcity, to confirm, remove that pattern, be like, it is okay that we don't receive this huge commission. It's not worth it. This is not worth it to me.
Yeah, so that takes a sense of like awareness too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I have another question coming up. How, it kind of ties in with what you're saying, how would someone know where exactly they need to surrender? As they're becoming aware of what's happening?
So that's an awesome question. At the beginning, it's, my answer is, it really depends on who you are. Right? So if you're the type of person who tends to be more controlling, like I was, okay, at the beginning, like lots and lots of control issues, surrender is going to be harder for you. And you need to surrender more. Sorry.
Darn.
It's flash, but that's what's
some people it's easy. It comes really naturally.
It comes easy,
They're
naturally.
Like, whatever.
Yeah. And for those people, actually, to hold your space and to have discipline is the thing to practice. It's the opposite of what you are.
I see.
You see, that helps you self-define your boundaries and all that sort of stuff, right? It's a different form of discipline. So, so what I would say is it depends on who you are. And also, just in terms of, the mind is a funny, slippery thing. Okay, so for some people, especially the control types, they're like, well, I've surrendered all of these things, so I'm done. Surrender complete. Check. Just done. And it's funny because our ego minds will sometimes do that. You know, it's like, okay, I've like scanned the field. I'm okay with everything. And I'm like, okay, well, a good thing to do is to look at the things you hold the most dear. Okay, your most beloved relationships, the security you feel from having money in your bank account, your home, your work that you need for survival, or whatever it is. Now, notice if there's wobble there, or there's instability, or that there is like potential loss there. How are you with that?
Like thinking of those things being gone.
Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah. Scary. You're like, ah. So what that indicates simply is attachment, right? So really it's like, okay, the work is to become, okay, well, how is it, who am I without that? Like, where's my strength, right? Like, what happens if that disappears? Because we rely on all those things to like define ourselves, feel safe, feel stable, feel loved, right? Those are all the things as humans that we really value. And that's attachment. So I'm not suggesting that you have to lose all of these things. Okay, so just to be really clear.
I'm thinking of like Buddhism, non-attachment. Go like sell or just get rid of everything and go live in a cave. Tree.
It's not required. Right? Really, this is like a new form of work. So with the frequency work, so first of all, we're talking about this very mentally, right? This like we're having this awesome exchange and it's helpful. honestly, I feel like surrender is really difficult to do from the mind only. It's almost impossible. Like I couldn't do it even if I wanted to before. Like I really needed to clear the distortion patterns, because you have to clear all this stuff, like fear of loss, scarcity stuff. Like you have to clear all the stuff, and then you can move into surrender. It's like actually possible, right? Because otherwise it's just this little mind game that you're playing. It's not really real. So that's what I'm saying. How do you know what to surrender? It's like when you get to those things that are really close to you, can you sit with that? Okay. Can you be okay with that not being there? And it's not like you terminate all your relationships and go live by yourself as an aesthetic. I'm not saying that. Yeah. I'm just saying that notice your reaction to that and work towards this point where it's like, okay, I would be extraordinarily sad if that person was no longer in my life. And ultimately, I would be okay.
Because you know who you are.
You know who you are.
Yeah.
You know who you are, you know?
Beautiful.
So it's just like, and that's the surrender, because it's surrender to higher self, pure source only. And that's the surrender from strength that I talk about, because you know how strong you are. You know your connection to pure source, and that you can transcend even the loss of something so beloved to you. You're like, I can transcend this, right? So you recognize that strength. So you're willing to surrender even more because there's less fear. You're like, all right, I'm willing to let this go. So it's a slippery thing, but that's what we're looking towards.
And challenging.
And challenging, yeah, because we're human.
Yeah, but that's why, because we're human. So I have one more question that came up about a minute ago. What do you think the kind of difference between surrender and spiritual bypassing?
Yeah.
Or can you just talk about those two?
Yes, and just, absolutely. Thank you. So, like I said, the ego mind is really slippery. Yeah. Okay, so sometimes, especially for those of you who control, or it can even happen in the people who are more easy with surrender, like, oh, I got it. It's so easy for me, right? Like I've got surrender. I've seen that too. I'm like, oh, really? Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. That's great that you think that. So what we can do is go to a place where we don't want to face the fear of loss of those things that we hold closest to us. Right? We're just like, and it's not even with things, honestly. Like people, people are afraid of losing money and stuff like that. But honestly, when it comes down to it, the final things to surrender that is the hardest for us, the hardest is people. The ones you love. Yeah. Okay? That is the freaking hardest thing. At least for me, it was. Yeah. And so it's, when people become afraid of really facing that, they'll bypass, meaning like they won't go through the reckoning of like, oh my God, I'm terrified of this. Like it's so incredibly sad to me. It just like, it like makes me just like, you know what I mean? The emotion of that. They just want to go around it, be like, oh yeah, I'm surrendered. Everything is good. It's totally fine. You know what I mean? I'm like, okay. You know what I mean? Without going through the fire of like that accountability to self. Like, am I really okay with this? Like what if that most beloved person in my life was no longer there? Like to go through that and to release your attachment to them. It's not that you don't love them anymore. Okay, and it's not that you don't have intimacy and closeness and strength and like things that make you both stronger together. You still have all that, but it changes the game when you don't need them in that way. Do you know, to make you feel better, more stable, more strong, to define yourself, because ultimately, as you said, we know who we truly are. We know our brilliance, and we get to intersect with this person and have this amazing experience. And ultimately, should that dissolve, it's okay.
Yeah. You come here alone, you leave alone, kind of a thing.
Exactly. Yeah. And alone and part of the all.
Right. Of course.
Right?
Yes.
And when you come in, you know that you're part of the all. And then as you leave, you know that you're part of the all. If you're awakening as you die, or you're awakened before you die. So all those things are really beautiful. And it changes the nature of your most intimate relationship, because you're like, I don't need them to give this to me. And we get to intersect in this amazing way.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
It's like jealousy falls away.
Yeah.
That's like the main thing I'm thinking about.
Yeah. And also taking the other person for granted, because you're like,
yeah.
right? Because you're just like, we get to choose to be together, right? You're not just there serving my need for stability. Oh, wow, we get to have this amazing gift of being together. That's awesome. Like, how cool is that? You know, that of all the people in the world and the timing, everything, like we did this. You know, how awesome is that?
Yes, what a gift.
What a gift. So it brings you back to that. Isn't it funny? Yeah. So when we surrender to, like, it's weird because it sounds like loss, you know, like you surrender the one you're most attached to, but it's not. It's freedom for both of you. So it's...
Wow, I like that. Surrender is freedom.
Yeah, totally. And it's really surrender only to pure source, higher self. That's it. No one else. So you're surrendering to yourself, really, and your greater self, really, and your higher self. Yeah. So just to make that clear.
Thank you. A lot of wisdom here on this one.
Thank you.
So GFC at the end.
GFC at the end, super important.
Very important.
This is the way to get you into more surrender.
Yeah.
There is an entire deep dive on surrender from strength.
Yeah.
I might at some point redo that one because I've changed, my abilities have changed.
Yeah.
Surrender is something that's challenging for a lot of people. It doesn't really matter. Look, I don't care how advanced you think you are or not, how awakened we think we are. If the answer is, do you need to surrender more? The answer always is yes.
Yeah. And it's an ongoing thing.
Ongoing.
You haven't just arrived.
No.
Right?
No,
just to
you keep
revisit
going.
that. Yeah.
And there are moments, right? You're like, oh my God, I have to surrender some more.
Yeah.
You're like, I can't anymore.
But you can.
You
and
can.
will.
Yeah, exactly. You're just like, all right. So,
Cool.
yeah.
Thank you so much, Karen.
Thank you.
So we're about to start the group frequency calibration, where we actually do the frequency work and where change is catalyzed. To get to the GFC, click on the square that'll appear to the right or the link in the description below. Because I'm working on frequency level, GFCs are not like regular meditations. Many people go into a somewhat altered state, so please don't drive while listening to this. It's time to bring in a new experience, a new consciousness, and a new world. Let's rise together.